So you'll get a copy of this after. All right, so good morning again. Thank you for joining us for the Career Readiness Network High Wage, High Demand Career Panel. Again, my name is Samantha Jackson. I'm a college and career readiness consultant at Kent ISD. Quick housekeeping item for our participants. Please make sure that your Zoom name is your name or some variation of your name so that I can make sure that you get appropriate sketch credit for today. I'm scrolling really quick. It looks like everyone is pretty good. If you don't have a last name, go ahead and add that just so I can make sure in case there's multiple people with the same first name. But otherwise, looks like most people are pretty good. If you don't know how to change your name, if you kind of hover on your square where your picture would be, there's 3 dots and you can click rename there, or you can also go to the participants list and kind of hover over your name and click the 3 dots there. So we are officially halfway through the Career Readiness Network for this year. We have 3 additional sessions after this one. So in March, we have resume writing. April, we have career zones in the military. And then in May, we have a project showcase. So just really quickly wanted to share the purpose of this panel today. This is, I think, the 3rd time that we've done this one with different careers featured. But really the goal here is to highlight Michigan's high wage, high demand careers. And so every year Michigan Works puts out a document with careers that are showing growth, they have good earnings. And so West Michigan Works also puts out a list, but then we have the whole state of Michigan. And so I'm actually going to show you these documents here real quick, or these websites. And I'll share this with our participants after, but so you can see this is Michigan's Hot 50 Job Outlook through 2030. And in this document, you'll see different careers, how many projected annual job openings there are, and then kind of the growth and wages. And then it also shows you the typical education for that career. So it's not all just like bachelor's or master's degree programs. There's also ones that have on-the-job training, apprenticeships, ones that associate's degrees. So a wide variety in here. So all of the careers represented today come from this list. Similarly, West Michigan Works puts out this list every year. And this one has a nice, little bit more user-friendly format here. So you can look at the 6 listed, 6 major industries that West Michigan Works focuses on. And so then you can see within each of those, what are some of the top, again, high wage, high demand jobs. And so again, all of our panelists today come from these lists. All right, if you do have any questions throughout, please go ahead and feel free to throw those in the chat. I have a list of questions to get us started, but please go ahead and throw those in, whether it's for all of our panelists, one panelist, that's totally okay. All right, so we are going to jump ahead into our panel for today. So I'm just going to have each of our panelists go through and share their name, position, organization. Actually, we'll just start with that, and then we'll get into some more specifics in just a moment. So we'll go in order here. We'll start with Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Bukema, and I am a physical therapist and assistant center manager at Hulse Jepson Physical Therapy. I'm located at our Cascade location. Hulse Jepson now has 24 clinics. So yes, I'm located in Cascade.
Thank you. Yeah, Alyssa.
Hello, I'm Alyssa Van Beek. I'm a physical therapist assistant for Hulse Jepson Physical Therapy, and I work over at our Jenison office off of Baldwin Street.
Thank you. Andy.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Andy Weisbrod. I'm the Vice President of Construction for Plume Service Company. We are a commercial and industrial mechanical contractor located in Grand Rapids.
Thank you, Andy. Lydia.
Hi, I'm Lydia. I'm a paralegal at Teeples and Teague Law and Holt Fluor Law. I also do contract work as well. We mainly do estate planning and business law.
Thank you. And Brian.
Good morning, everyone. Name's Brian Canero, and I am an industrial engineer from Amway. I'm working out of our Ada campus, so the main campus for Amway.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to get rid of these slides now so we can see everyone. All right, there we go. Let me go back to my questions. Okay, so now again, feel free to hop in whenever you would like to answer. But diving a little bit deeper into yourself, can you talk to us about when you were in high school? What did you think you were going to be when you grew up? And then, or actually, start with your responsibilities. So, in your job, what are kind of your main responsibilities? What does a typical day look like for you? If we were talking to students, what would we share that this job does? And then when you were younger, when you were in high school, when you were in elementary school, what did you think you were going to be? And does this align with that?
Would you like me to start?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm Jessica. I'm a physical therapist. Primarily, my day is spent treating patients who are coming in with orthopedic injuries. It's interesting in outpatient ortho, though, we can treat vestibular impairments, balance. I treat pediatrics as well. So we see people of the ranges from I have as little as an 8-week-old up to mid-90s. So we get quite a variety of patients. But we help them through the rehab process. Management duties include overseeing staff, managing the clinic, just overall expenditure. And then we also, because we're a private practice, we do our own marketing. So we will go and visit doctors' offices. Hulse Jepson in Cascade is a part of the Ada Business Association. So we will attend events through them, and then we do like local events based on where we live. So races, anything to be helpful to our community. And then did you want, it was what I wanted to be when I was in high school?
Yeah.
I was headed for the dental route, so I wanted to be a dentist. I ended up going to MSU. I was part of the pre-dental club. Didn't really like dentistry when I started shadowing, but I knew I kind of always wanted to go into medical, so it was just figuring out what part of the medical field, and physical therapy made the most sense.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, I can go next. So a typical day for me, I see a lot of patients throughout the day. And then we have to do documentation on all of our patients to say how they did throughout the session. And then we also provide updated home exercises programs for each of our patients so that they can take some exercises home each day and work on those when we don't see them in the clinic. And then my job also entitles a lot of patient education to the family and the patient themselves on just different diagnoses and healing timelines. I also run our aquatic therapy program for Hulse Jepson. So a couple days out of the week, I'll see patients in the pool, which allows them an easier time with exercise if they're not tolerating land exercise very well. It's a good way for them to be able to exercise as well. And then, like Jess said as well, my clinic is also very active in the community. We like to get out and support our local schools around. So this week, Jenison High School is doing their Pink Out Week to support breast cancer awareness. So we're doing some fundraisers throughout the week, and then we'll attend the high school game at the end of the week to support our local community.
Fun.
And then what I wanted to do in high school, I didn't 100% know until I had my own sports injury in high school. I ruptured my Achilles tendon my junior year. So then I went through the rehab process and then kind of fell in love with it. So then I pursued it.
And between the two of you, can you share a little bit about the difference between what a physical therapist does and what a physical therapist assistant does? I mean, I know you just kind of shared what your job is, but
Yeah, so a physical therapist, they will always do the initial evaluation for the patient. So they will always see the patient for the first visit and gather that diagnosis. And then they also are allowed to do what's called dry needling in the state of Michigan. And then as a physical therapist assistant, I am not allowed to do dry needling or initial evaluations. But typically, how we do it at my clinic is that sometimes the patient will see the physical therapist and sometimes they'll see me. It just depends mainly on therapist schedules and who's open. But not a huge difference between physical therapists and physical therapist assistants. If we go to like continuing education courses, we all go to the same ones and learn that way. So
Interesting. Thank you.
Samantha, do you want specifics on my role or more like what our company would offer?
Both would be great.
Okay. So in my role as VP of construction at Plume, a lot of what I'm doing day to day is, developing business plans, checking in on those, seeing how they're going, and really more than anything, working with people, removing obstacles so that they can do their jobs. Not doing their job for them, but helping them to if there's a problem or something they have an issue with. What I've really come to learn over the years is 90% of what we do in management or leadership is people. It's a very technical industry in mechanical, but at the end of the day, it's the people that that's the most rewarding part of the job, but it's also the most challenging. And so there aren't a lot of VPs of construction. I mean, every company might have one, but there are a lot of other roles, and I've worn a lot of other hats on my way to this role. And so that's most of the people in the company and most of the jobs are executing the work to that plan. So we kind of set the course at the executive level, and then the company gets us where we're going, so to speak. And even that, there's a lot of, we hire way more field people every year than office. And we plan to hire probably 20 to 30 field people this year. And I think every company like us probably has similar plans. But even in the office, most of the people, if you were interested in construction but thought, I like marketing or I like sales, I think I might like to be a project manager. A great place to start is in the field. You learn a bit about the trade, and most companies like ours will pay or help significantly toward any education or training that you need to get into office roles. And so I think that answers that question. I don't know that I can be super helpful with what I thought in high school because I had no idea. And then I, by default, kind of adopted what my parents did as things I might be interested in. And so my dad was a chemical engineer. I started out engineering, and after calculus for engineers, I thought, yeah, I might do something different. I then pivoted to psychology and ended up getting a degree in psychology. And at the time after college, thinking, what will I do with this? It's actually proven to be pretty helpful over the years. But nothing related to what I mean, you would think psychology degree and mechanical contractor, not a lot in common, but it turns out, yeah, it's been pretty helpful.
But I love that. We tell students all the time, right? Like it's okay to change your mind later, to think that you
Yes,
are going
for
down
sure.
one path and every experience that you have is good experience and gives you a little bit more information about what you might want to do. So I love that.
Exactly.
All right, Brian or Lydia?
Yeah.
I can go ahead,
Oh, you
Lydia.
can go. Are you sure? Okay.
Go
Okay.
ahead. We'll stay in order. It'll make it easier.
All right. Yeah, so to piggyback back off that, I also had no idea what I wanted to do in high school. I remember taking the career test that you would take like your junior or senior year, and I would get FBI agent all the time. And so I thought that was cool, but it was like so not me. And at one point I wanted to be a pilot. And then I wanted to go into politics, and I went all the way all over the board. And I ended up at GRCC, which I like highly recommend to any high school student who doesn't yet know what they want to do. But yeah, my day-to-day job is it's kind of like a nurse is to a doctor, a paralegal is to an attorney. So I and since I'm at a small firm, I kind of wear all the hats. I'm the youngest person in my building, so I'm the IT person by default, which I really like. And I do a lot of administration work. Um, I order all of the office supplies. I probably spend like half of my day doing legal research and writing, and the other half just miscellaneous tasks. I think it keeps it interesting because no day is the same. And I really like doing estate planning and business law. You really like get to know your clients, and I do a lot of meetings with clients and signings of documents and stuff like that. So that is my day today.
Thank you. And Brian.
All right. So industrial engineering, I've been doing this for a little bit over a decade now, and I'm lucky enough to end up at a wonderful company like Amway to do that work at this stage of my career, which is great. Um, Day-to-day life, industrial engineering is very interesting because it's not as pigeonholed as maybe some of the individual engineering disciplines. So I spend about a 50-50 split between time in a manufacturing environment on a plant floor, working with operators and equipment on typical manufacturing type work. The other 50% is a lot of design work, project management, and detailed plant financials. So in this particular profession, you work in a lot of those spaces. If you're someone who is more interested in math and science, like I was growing up, it's a great opportunity within the engineering field to get something that's very flexible. I've had the opportunity to work on various projects and finance and sales and technical research side of businesses. I've been able to do capital equipment purchases and project installations. It's a very applicable kind of degree and career path that lets you be very flexible. So that is by far my favorite thing about it. It lets you work and do a lot of different spaces and really sets the table for your long-term career growth and different areas that you might want to go to. I'm a little different when you talk about what I wanted to be in high school. My mom likes to share I think it's an old like Dilbert commercial strip about like a kid getting diagnosed as an engineer when he's like 2. I was forever taking apart everything in our house that was electrical or mechanical, and I'm a very, very stereotypical engineering student. So I did a lot of job shadowing through like middle school and high school and was very confident that I wanted to be in the general field of engineering. When I got to college at U of M, I had a great counselor who helped me work through. I was a little worried after a few years of getting into mechanical engineering that it might be a little bit too restricted to the areas that I could take that with my career. So industrial engineering was something that gives you a little bit broader of a range of opportunities as you come out of education and get early into career. So that's kind of how I ended up where I'm at.
Well, thank you. You answered my next question, which I feel like a lot of students, particularly like high school students, they might know what mechanical or like have a general idea of mechanical engineering, maybe like electrical, but industrial is usually not something that a lot of students know about. So sounds like you figured that out in college going into the mechanical route, but then figuring out like, that's not quite it, and then exploring other options.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So some of you have touched on this a little bit, or you've touched on your kind of educational path, but what education is required or training is required to go into the field? So whether you did it or did something else first, what education is actually required to do what you do?
I'll start. For physical therapists now, it is a doctorate degree to get into the program. It's quite competitive now, so GPA is a huge factor. We've had a couple techs recently get waitlisted with a 3.9 or a 4.0 GPA. So I would just encourage students to really prioritize school when they have a plan to go into any of the medical grad programs. A physical therapist will typically, I think any science major is fine, but what you'll primarily get looked at when you try to enter into a program is heavy biomechanics, physics, physiology background, not as much chemistry for physical therapy. And then of course, on the side, you'll want to just have some experience interacting with people. I would say that's a huge part of it. Something in the medical field where you're interacting with people. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical therapy, but it's such a personable job. So you want to be really good at interacting with people.
And Jessica, that's a pretty recent change, right? Like within the last 5 or so years that it's a doctorate instead of a
I think it's been like, okay,
master's.
so it's a doctorate program and I graduated 10 years ago. So I think it was about
Okay.
15 years ago that it made the shift.
Oh, wow. Time is a
I
time.
know it goes fast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so to become a physical therapist assistant, I had to earn my associate's degree in applied science. So in high school, I took anatomy and physiology, and then I went to Baker College out in Muskegon. So you take your year of prereqs, and then you'll apply to the program. And when you're applying to the program, like Jess said, they like to see observation hours, kind of people interaction to see how you would do. And then they also look heavily on your science prereqs that you take in college. Those will be double weighted, and then you'll apply to the program. So applying to the program, for me, it was pretty competitive just because there's not a lot of physical therapist assistant programs around here. The closest ones are Baker College in Muskegon and then Kellogg Community College down by Battle Creek, Kalamazoo area, I think. And then Baker has some other campuses that are a little bit farther away. And then typically into the program, they let around 20 to 25 people in per program. So they keep their class sizes smaller. So it makes it fairly competitive. So yeah, I would, like Jess said, encourage students to, if they want to pursue this route, to take their prereqs in college seriously and high school classes and get some observation hours so they can kind of get their feet wet and see what they're getting into.
Thank you.
For commercial HVAC, for my role in particular, it's kind of been a long road, but in our industry, I mean, we take people, kids right out of high school to start, and we will train them and pay for that. You can get a little bit ahead by going, say, to a 2-year community college, getting an associate's degree in HVAC. That would put you basically the equivalent of someone who's maybe started here right out of high school and has been here about 4 to 5 years. So it's a bit of a head start if you start at a community college. And then we have people that get a 4-year degree, like a lot of them come from Ferris. They have a really good program for HVAC, and we'll hire people direct from there. And so there's a number of paths to get there. And then, but I want to reiterate that there's a lot of training and things that happen after the fact once you get there. And I think that's a great way to have the employer pay whenever you can, so that you don't have to bear all of that yourself.
And Andy, is for like those upper level management roles, is that something that people can get to working their way up, or is it something that will eventually require like a bachelor's degree or something?
I have a bachelor's in psychology and most of a master's in business administration over the years, and then had kids and was already doing the job and thought, I'm gonna quit there. But formal education is probably less. You see less of that as you're climbing the ladder in the company. And I've worked at some really large contractors in Cincinnati and other areas of Michigan. And Plume isn't as large, but we do the same kinds of things. You'll pick a topic or something and get training on that. I've had in recent years, for the last 8 years, an executive coach and a peer group that I meet with. That's been tremendously helpful too. One thing you find as you go higher in an organization, there are fewer people to talk to about the types of problems that you face. And so you start having to reach outside your organization to get those answers. But I think if you have a mindset of I'm going to continue to get better at what I do until the day I retire, I think that's the right place to be. It's never like you've arrived and anything like that. The reality is you serve more people the higher you go. And you have a responsibility and an obligation to be better at what you do tomorrow than what you are today.
Thank you. Lydia?
Yeah, I think types of education required to be a paralegal. So in other states, they require certain certifications or bachelor's degree, but in Michigan, nothing is technically required. That being said, I don't foresee a law firm or any paralegal position hiring somebody who doesn't have at least an associate's or office work background. I think a good beginner job would be a receptionist. If kids can get a job as a receptionist, that would be a great way. And to see if they like working in an office environment of any office. I think paralegal work is also each paralegal position is so vastly different, depending on what law firm or if you're in-house at a big corporation, or if you're at a little solo practitioner law firm. It's going to be like so vastly different, which is really great. Um, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's a high demand job because it's so transferable to any really administration jobs. But really, I would, if kids want to, I'm not sure, it would be hard, but if they just applied like on Indeed to all the job postings that are out there, that's really how I got into it. Or if they do GRCC or GVSU, they can volunteer at some local nonprofits. Like the Legal Assistance Center is where I started, and that would be a good opportunity for them to keep growing.
Thank you. And similar to what Andy said, I know of several paralegals that, maybe their firm did eventually want them to get an associate's in paralegal studies or something. And so maybe they got hired in without any, additional education, but then they've paid for them to
Yeah,
get some of those additional certifications or an associate.
yeah, and it's definitely like the more education you have, the more you can do like in-depth like legal research and writing versus like a new paralegal at a big firm probably doesn't do a lot of legal research and writing. They do more just administration tasks. Um, yeah, that's pretty much a difference.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So on the engineering side of things, there's a couple paths that can get you in industrial engineering in particular, or kind of the manufacturing engineering spectrum. It's shifting more, particularly at larger companies right now, to a bachelor's. I personally went through and did a traditional 4-year engineering program. Most of the interns and folks we would hire at an Amway are going to follow that same track. There is an opportunity for the earlier in career, like internship programs that if you have an associate's already, I know some high schools are even now offering like paired programs with colleges that let you start getting ahead on that type of aspect. That stuff's helpful, but traditionally, it's going to be a bachelor's degree. If you're in a highly specialized engineering field, there are opportunities for master's and doctoral work. The market for those isn't quite as wide as you would have with a general bachelor's degree. I don't know that the benefits always there, but if you have a specialized area you're looking to going into relative to like industrial engineering, for example, on the data and analytics side of things, I work with a couple individuals that are working towards master's or doctorate level, um, you know, educational backgrounds, and there is some opportunity for that stuff. The other option that I have seen, particularly at smaller companies, which I worked at earlier in my career, there is an opportunity to work your way up through from like a manufacturing position, particularly if you're in like a maintenance or technical background. And companies often help out with associate's degrees, or some of the industrial engineering realm can get into certifications of different kinds that you can go ahead and get, and that'll help you build out that skill set relative to this type of profession. So there is an opportunity, although I think it's shrinking a little bit, to work your way up in a less traditional type of way to get into this.
Yeah, thank you. I know a lot of you have already kind of touched on this, so it's okay if you pass or repeat, but um, what types of experiences did you have that you feel like helped prepare you for this career? So, classes, clubs, part-time jobs, whether directly related or not. And then what types of experiences would you recommend to students that might be interested in this field?
For physical therapy, I would say at the high school level, um, I think any type of job where you're serving people is helpful. Just getting you kind of set up to talk with people, get to know them, and then shadow experiences just to see if this is the type of career that you want to try to pursue when you're in college. When you get to the collegiate level, I would say, certified nursing assistant. Working at Hulse Jepson, we have physical therapy techs that work in our clinics and they help lead patients through exercises. So those are good jobs in order to prepare and get some of those hours that undergrad is the time to spend and then you apply to PT school. I think the physical therapy program alone prepares you really well to become a physical therapist. And during that time, you're just trying to figure out what type of physical therapist do I want to be. You get 4 or 5 different clinical education experiences. So I felt really prepared for the job at that point. But leading up to it, just figuring out if it's an area you want to pursue versus other medical careers.
Yeah, I agree with just making sure that you're observing in the field of physical therapy. So there's a lot of different settings that we can work in: outpatient, nursing home, inpatient, in the hospital, subacute. Mary Free Bed has a really good college volunteer program. So students would need to be done with high school, but if they're in college, they can volunteer at Mary Free Bed, apply to that program, and that just gives them good experience and also gives them observation hours as well. And then at Hulse Jobs, and we have PT techs, like Jessica said. So that's a good way to experience the outpatient world as well.
Yeah. I know you both already said in terms of classes, focusing more on the human anatomy, physiology, less on like the chemistry kind of science.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Andy?
So I would say, in terms of like classes in high school, math, science, all of those things, uh, English, communicate any opportunities for communication skills. And that could be in a class or a club or any of those kind of things. And I think opportunities that involve teamwork. If you're doing construction, you're going to be part of a team that on a job site might be 150 people. You might be working with 6 to 12 other people from your own company, and all of that being coordinated with a lot of other contractors. And so, having worked as part of a team, I think is tremendously helpful in whatever form that comes. The other thing I'd like to mention, and Brian, you mentioned this earlier. I was exactly the same. Always wanted to take things apart, figure out how they worked, and see if I could put them back together again. It's a lot easier today taking a picture with your phone before you take it apart, so you don't have to remember it all. But just, kind of staying curious and always thinking about how do things work. I probably have more hobbies than most people today. But it's like once I figure something out, it's like I get bored with it and I go on to the next thing. But it's just sort of a trying to stay curious about things around you.
I love that.
Here. I would say for paralegal work, one thing that all paralegals have in common is you do a lot of reading and writing. In high school, before I knew that being a paralegal was even an option. I loved all English classes. I took all like AP, Lit, and Comp, and my electives were the regular English classes. I also loved history. I think if you're really inclined to like AP government, and history classes, you really do have to be like good academically. But on top of that, similar to all of the other careers, is being a people person, I think, is I love working with clients and you do interact with so many people on a daily basis. You really have to be good at that. A lot And in a lot of other areas of law, like family law and criminal law, you're meeting people when it's their worst time in their life. So part of it is I think a lot of people who are good at being paralegals actually come from a social work background, because they're just so good at dealing with all different forms of emotions from various people.
Makes sense.
But for experiences in high school, I that would be hard for any like entry level positions. But I think if a high school student reached out to any law firm, they would be more than happy to have them job shadow. I think that would be a really good way to see what working in an office environment is like.
And I think obviously, students have a long time before they have to decide like, what type of law they would want to work in. But I think different experiences too, right? Like you are working in estate and family law, which is very different than,
Yeah.
being a paralegal for criminal, criminal defense law
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
There's lots of different types that I don't think students always see the courtroom and the person in the
Yeah.
courtroom.
Yeah. And now doing estate planning and business law, all of the attorneys I work for don't do any litigation, so they never appear in court. Versus if you are like a litigation paralegal, it's just vastly different, like the deadlines and requirements that go along with that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think I'd echo a lot of what's been shared with a lot of the other folks that have gone before me on this, but the biggest one for me, I was able, thankfully, growing up through middle and high school, to do a lot of job shadowing. I think that's immensely important in any field, but even within, if we just focus on the area of engineering, I mentioned earlier the different paths you can go down within that, right? It's one thing to read pamphlets and read stuff online and read about programs that schools offer. It's another to functionally see what those jobs are like on a day-to-day basis. So I always encourage students that I meet, and I do a lot of work with interns and early and career engineers. I encourage them to shadow. I encourage them to network and spend time with folks that are in other disciplines in technical fields, just to get an understanding for how your interactions play into other folks' worlds, and to get some perspective on maybe where you want to focus your career. We're talking about a lot of kids that are 16, 17, 18, and then going through college. So you're talking early 20s coming out, early in career individuals, right? Even if you have a pretty good idea of what you want to do, you may find, and it varies by company as well, once you get out into the workplace, right, that maybe you need a pivot or you want to go somewhere else. So always continue to ask questions, be curious, and try to continue finding that path forward. Get as much experience as you can. I know you've been talking about that, and I can't emphasize that enough. The other one too that I will echo, just because I don't think this comes up a lot when engineers are talking, work on those people skills and presentation skills. A great idea that you cannot communicate effectively or share with people or get buy-in from non-technical people is a problem. So take those opportunities, join the clubs where whether it's debate or different opportunities to present, to talk in front of people, to get comfortable with that, to practice that craft. That is a practice skill. Nobody rolled out of bed or was born and as a toddler became the world's greatest public speaker that knew how to carry on conversations and do all these things. Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, you all are like answering all of my other questions already, which is amazing. I was going to talk about kind of like non-academic skills, and I know your students are going to love to hear this, right? Because they love talking to people and they love teamwork. They really, really love those things. So, but now you can tell them there are 5 professionals from different fields that have all said communication, people skills, teamwork are so important in all of these fields. I think some fields have, some stereotypes or misconceptions that like, oh, I'm just going to be like grinding, like not having to talk to people, construction, engineering, they think like, oh, I'm just going to do my thing. When no, it is really important to still be able to communicate your thoughts to others and to be able to explain what's going on and to serve your clients appropriately. So, are there any other of those kind of like non-academic, durables, soft skills that any of you think are important that we didn't already touch on?
One thing I would add is like being highly organized. I'm not sure about other fields, but it's like I don't know if it's a personality thing sometimes, but I do think that it's also just learn to be super organized just in your daily life. But that's a skill that's definitely necessary for good, thorough legal work, anyways.
Absolutely.
I'd throw in there with physical therapy or probably any medical job is the ability to multitask while being present. There's so many times where you've got a phone call with the patient, an email with work, you're trying to work one-on-one with this patient, you're trying to direct PT texts, you've got your patient coming in early that's not supposed to be here. So you have to be able to, no day's the same, and you have to be open-minded and be able to multitask and adapt to changes.
I think I'd throw in one more thing too. The idea of kind of goes along with the concept that was brought up earlier, like being curious, being able to accept constructive criticism. So when people are giving you honest feedback, which I think is really important, getting familiar with the idea of being able to listen to the actual point that's being communicated and not being too terribly emotionally attached to it. So that's a very difficult skill to practice, right? There's a lot of limited places where you get that type of practice, particularly before you get into a professional field. But one of the things that I often notice a lot and work a lot with young engineers on is, you have all this technical training and they go to these great programs and they come in and they design or have an idea and a process they put together. And when you have to provide feedback from a real world perspective about these things that they've designed or worked on, people struggle with that a lot early in career. So I'm taking some opportunities, whether it's through joining like some robotics clubs or different like technical types of clubs where you're doing project work and getting feedback from groups and competing maybe in some of those types of academic arenas, that provides a lot of opportunity to practice some of that soft skill, because I think that's important.
Yeah. I'm going to ask one more question and then we'll open it up to the chat if anyone has questions. I see a couple in there, but feel free to throw any in there that you have. So I mentioned at the beginning, these careers are all listed on West Michigan's list of high wage, high demand jobs. So we've talked a little bit about how competitive some of the programs are, maybe educational programs to get into, but what does the kind of current landscape look once you finish any requirements that you have to get into the field? What does that kind of look like, particularly here in West Michigan? And, how competitive is it to get into the field? Are there, those entry level or, positions to go into?
I would say for physical therapy, there's still a great need for therapists, just depending on where you're looking. In Grand Rapids, there are jobs available, and it depends on the time of year. We know when the new grads are going to be graduating. So I would say in August, September, the job market might be a little bit less because we will have hired some of those new grads. And then we have a school here. So Grand Valley is here. And so there may not be as many jobs in Grand Rapids available, but all over Michigan and the nation, physical therapists are needed. And there's so many different areas of physical therapy you can get into. People are constantly aging, getting hurt. So I think this is a job that's going to be around for a long time, and there's going to always be need.
Yeah, I also agree with Jess. Physical therapist assistants are always needed because we are support staff to the physical therapist. And then it also depends kind of what area of physical therapy you're looking into. Typically like the nursing homes or hospitals, there's a great need for physical therapist assistants there. And outpatient orthopedics is sometimes more sought after compared to inpatient. So those jobs tend to go quicker and be applied for faster. But yeah, there's always a need for us, so that's good.
Yeah, I think for us, in the construction industry at large, just thinking about an association I belong to, we've got on the east side of the state 300 member companies. Here in West Michigan, there's 400 member companies, and that's leaving out Detroit. And when you think about the sheer numbers of companies doing what we do that all need people, I'm going to hire probably 20 young people that either right out of high school or with a community college degree or a 4-year degree for that matter, but or anything in between in the coming year. But I think most companies like me are looking for the same. Some of them are much larger and need a lot more. I mean, Barton Mallow is the biggest general contractor in Michigan. I think they bring in 50 interns every year. And so there's a lot of opportunity. It's I think the competitive part starts when you get here. I think it's relatively easy to get in at a construction company today if you're there to work hard every day and you're going to show up on time. When you're done with what you've been asked to do, you go ask, what can I do next? Some of those basic things. But there is a huge need. I think it's just continuing to get worse every year. We're going to have um, continued shortages, projects not getting done when they need to, and those sort of things, which will drive up wages. So it'll continue to become a more attractive industry as well, I believe.
Mhm.
Yeah, to piggyback off what you said, it being a paralegal is also another job that's relatively easy to get into. But once you're there, especially at big firms, it is super competitive, and they know who. If you can make it there a few years, then you're solid and you can keep growing. But if you're just not cut out for it, if you're just not making it, it's a job that you'll often get let go in. Um, I just know from my friends' experiences, which is one thing that I don't like about a lot of big law firms. Because if you get into really anywhere you work with a healthy work environment and you're working for good people and you like your coworkers, that's the best way to stay at your job, and stay competitive as long as you're personally driven and you're well organized and trying your best to get better every day.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah.
from oh yeah, so from a engineering perspective, over the period of my career, there have always been positions readily available for this. Industrial engineering, kind of like I mentioned, the nice thing is that it's not so restricted to like necessarily one individual avenue. There's a lot of kind of pathways within this area. So like on the data and analytics side, if you look at what everyone obviously sees around them with how technology evolves and changes, and all the plants and facilities and areas that we manufacture things across this country, that is also taking place. So there's a lot of need for additional engineers for systems implementation and all the work that goes into creating that new age kind of manufacturing environment. Um, Internships are also generally readily available. If you go like anything in life, if you go for more prestigious, larger companies with better track records, it can be a little bit more competitive in that. Your GPA and external experiences will play into that stuff. But it's a pretty good growing field that seems to be very stable and has been for my whole career and is not showing any signs of slowing down going forward. So that's good.
And Brian, in my experience, like a lot of times a mechanical engineer, their job title is mechanical engineer, but industrial, it's not always like your job title isn't necessarily industrial engineer. So if a student's interested in that area, like what types of job titles they be looking at?
So you'll be finding there's a handful of different engineering titles that you'll see floating around. So like manufacturing engineer and industrial engineer are often similar. Manufacturing engineer is going to be a little bit more micro level. Like I work very specifically on equipment and mechanical designs of fixturing or manufacturing techniques. Industrial engineering historically is a little bit higher level. You're dealing with like facility planning, capacity requirements, like more macro level management of a plant. Um, if you'll find people that call them mechanical engineers along the way, but they work in plants. You're going to want to look for anything that's engineering with a manufacturing reference in the job description. They're all going to kind of have overlap in different areas and be similar enough that they at least give you an opportunity to get your foot in the door with those types of careers.
Thank you. All right. Again, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to throw those in the chat. Specifically for physical therapy, Are the classes for physical therapist assistants similar to the initial classes for PT? And if so, could a person who is waitlisted for a physical therapy program start off as a PT assistant?
Melissa, I'll let you answer.
Okay. So for my prereqs, I had to take like a general math class, writing class, anatomy and physiology, and pathophysiology, which I believe is very similar to what physical therapy prereqs require. So they could apply to the PT assistant program, and then they'd go through the PT assistant program, and then say at the end of that program, Jess, this is where I might need your help. If they have a bachelor's degree, then I believe at that point they could reapply to the PT program, correct? If they have their bachelor's degree.
As long as they have a bachelor's degree, and then it's another 3 years after that once you get into the doctorate program.
And Jessica,
Yeah.
you talked also about having physical therapy technicians. So does that position require any degrees or certifications?
No, typically for our PT techs at Hulse Jepson, we train them ourselves, and it's one of those, it's a great experience to apply to either PTA or PT school because you're interacting with patients, you're learning how to lead them through exercise. But most of our techs have graduated from high school. They're typically in college applying to PT school.
Next question is about shadowing experiences. And I would say specifically so I know that, in college or in their programs, they're going to have a lot of opportunities for shadowing, internships, things like that. So thinking about our younger students, like our K-12 students, do you have recommendations for finding shadowing experiences if a student doesn't already have a connection to that area? Or how receptive are companies or offices to shadowing for K-12 students?
I can
Oh,
go
yes.
ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
All right. From a manufacturing side, and just businesses, I've worked for a couple larger and one smaller company in West Michigan. And at all of those places, we've been willing to bring in K through 12 students, primarily high school. When you get into the areas that I've typically worked, so like manufacturing and more industrial type areas, we're typically going to want that to be high school age kids. Just because we're going to, in a lot of cases, try to give them a walkthrough where we can of like facilities and just get them an experience of seeing not only engineering, but other things that take place in the manufacturing arena. But in terms of recommendations, the way that those usually work, a lot of companies, if you look at like an Amway, for example, that's larger, if you reach out and get in contact with like the HR departments at those facilities, a lot of these places already have educational programs and they will work with you to get you included in that and to build opportunities where they're available. Even for the smaller company I worked at previously, we were always willing with the local schools. We had an annual trip where they'd bring students in to learn about various companies throughout the city and all those types of things. So always start with HR department and know that there are a lot of receptive individuals that are willing to take that time with early in career or still high school age that are just, trying to figure things out and get some information.
Yeah, I would say the same. We've had several high school students observe at Hulse Jepson. So I would say they can reach out to either our website or if they have a specific clinic in mind, they can contact them directly. Most of our therapists are more than willing to let them observe and help them out and answer questions. Big thing is just we have to make sure that they understand what HIPAA is and they can't talk about the patients that we're seeing that day. So I don't think we've had anyone below high school, but we've definitely had several of them come in and out of the clinic.
We do the same from if somebody comes to us, takes the initiative to ask, usually that's saying something because there's very few that will. So we try to set something up for a ride along kind of opportunity. We do that a lot. We get referrals or kids or parents that know somebody that's interested and so we try to accommodate those everywhere we can. The other thing that's kind of interesting, we had two two students graduating high school 2 years ago that called us and said, "Hey, we're graduating high school. We're going to Ferris in the fall for HVAC, but wanted to see if we could learn more what it's about." And so we hired both of them for the summer. And so they got to spend the whole summer actually doing the job. And for one, it was like, yeah, I don't think this is for me. For the other, he was like, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do. And so very informative for both of them. And that guy actually was just hired full time by our service department after getting his first year under his belt. So
Love that.
Yeah, I think I don't know about other law firms, but I know for all the attorneys I've worked for and myself, if somebody were to reach out to our firm, and we have had two kids, I think, in the last 2 years who were high school students or seniors who wanted to come in, and we showed them around and talked about our day uh, for a good 2 hours to bin boarding. So if that was something that a student ever wanted to reach out to, I think we would say yes every time.
Yeah, in my experience, a lot of organizations are happy to have students come in and do shadows. Brian said, uh, typically if you can find an HR contact, that can be a really good place to start, even if you can't find a specific person you're looking to shadow or students are looking to shadow, they can start there and they can usually help get them connected. If you're here in Kent County, we also at the ISD and College and Career Readiness can also help. If you have a student that's interested in an area and you're like, I have no idea what to do, where to go with that, we are always happy to help get that connected as well. Panelists, there is another question in the chat about salary ranges. If you want to open that up, if you want to share any information, you're welcome to reply to that. But I did just want to finish us out with one question. Just if you had kind of one thing that you're hoping educators take away from today about your field, kind of what would that be? Or what do you think would have been helpful for you to kind of figure this out? A lot of you shared that, you went through high school and you were like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But is there anything that you think would have been helpful from the educator's perspective that could have, helped you figure out what would be good for you?
I think what Brian mentioned earlier about job shadowing and trying on different things, I think is important. Spending more time on that. Trying to, and I know it's hard at that age. I couldn't do it at the time, but kind of understanding about yourself. What are the things I enjoy? Do I like talking to people all day? If I don't, that helps make some decisions toward what I want to do. Um, and then not being afraid to change, because you're going to spend a lot of years doing something, and boy, it sure should be something that you enjoy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd say I was very lucky in that my intern or my job shadowing experience came about through contacts that my dad had from working in sales for his whole career. And I was able to get access to probably a lot more of those than some other individuals. And getting kids out to shadow can be difficult, right? Like that's a lot of work and setup. But even if you look at like from a career fair aspect, if you can get programs together, in schools to get folks like those of us on this panel to come in and just spend, half an hour with a group of kids that, hey, is anybody interested in learning about engineering? We'll give you a half hour to go down and hear about that and ask questions. Even some touch points like that, I think are very, very helpful things.
I think what I would encourage your students to do when they do shadow is come up with a list of questions. Like, what are you hoping to learn from this experience? I've had several high school students come, but I think they're more intimidated. It's almost like you're having to like pull out of them, like, what do you want from this experience? Like, what are you hoping to see? But I'm always like very happy to see students who seem passionate about being there, and you can tell who have the questions prepared, what they hope to get out of it, because I can't guess what they want to know about or what they're thinking. So
One thing I wish that when I was in high school and I didn't know what to do, there was a really big shift
Hi,
on going
Nathan.
to college. And sorry, what was that?
You're good. Keep going.
Was to like there was such a pressure to like know what you want to do, go to college, like get into good colleges. And so I was always caught up because I did get good grades in high school, but all of my friends went to 4 years and I went to GRCC and I felt like I was like, oh my gosh, I just like totally choked. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I'm at community college and I'm working full time, but really being 18, graduating high school, and working full time right off the bat and having to pay for college classes yourself, I think is the best thing for kids to have to do because it kind of like it puts your own skin in the game when you're paying for things yourself. I know and I graduated in 2014 and rent is crazy right now in the Grand Rapids area. But I did move out right away and I started working full time. I think that's the best way to figure out what you want to do because it forces you to realize like what you don't want to do when you're working as a server, you're working these jobs where there's no way to go up. It kind of forces you to figure it out and take your education more seriously.
I would say one thing that I thought would have been helpful is that when you become a physical therapist assistant, if you want to continue and become the physical therapist, there is an option for that as well. So there's a couple bridge programs throughout the US. I know the closest one is in Ohio. So at a program like that, you still work as a physical therapist assistant around 20 hours a week, and then you'll do online coursework, and then you travel to the school that you're studying at for a couple weekends throughout the year to learn hands-on stuff like that. So I think that can be very helpful because then if a student becomes a physical therapist and they find that they like it and want to continue their education more and become the physical therapist, there still is that option. But I feel like that can take off some of the pressure as to knowing right away that you want to go and become the physical therapist because there's just a lot of student loans that come along with that. So this can be a little bit of a different option to help minimize student loans if students were looking for something like that.
Great.
I would
Thank
say being a paralegal to attorney is a similar process. Like if people are on the fence about being an attorney, they should definitely just become a paralegal first. Plus, you might get at a big law firm that is willing to help you pay for law school, which is ideal.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us and sharing your insights today. I'm going to share the screen again just in case anyone needs my email. But participants, I will be sharing the recording, those resources I shared earlier. And then if any of the panelists are okay with sharing their info, I'll share any of those as well. But my email is up on the screen if you have any additional questions. Feel free to reach out, but thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day, all right?
Thank you.